Greetings everyone, I am Dr. Wolf, and I just watched Molt Down. Oh my goodness! I had no idea that the MLP staff were ever planning on giving Spike wings. I mean, goodness, how long were they planning to do this? I thought that maybe Spike had been a different kind of dragon entirely. Or they were going to come up with some random scenario that because he was living with ponykind his whole life that he was never going to grow them, but there it is. Okay, so I guess this is going to be a permanent thing for him now. But yeah, Spike is growing up. In fact, that's kind of the main point of this episode. Spike is going through puberty by the process of molting. Bit of an interesting transition, don't you think? But let's start from the beginning. Right off the bat, we're getting nods to continuity. Like, really far back continuity. Talking about going to meet Pee-wee again, which we haven't seen in forever. I mean, he was first shown in Dragon Quest Season 2, and which even then, only for a little bit. But hey, that's nice to see that they are making little nods like that. And even beyond that, Rarity starts making mention of later on when Spike is complaining about his itchy scales that, well, maybe you should go see Zecora. Or just don't get the shampoo. Okay, they're mentioning even more continuity to it isn't the main thing about you. When Spike was talking to Smolder about his growth process in Secret of My Excess, that's a huge nod to continuity, and actually would have been a very poignant question given what he's going through in this episode here. So yeah, even more good work on the writer's part. But even more beyond that, Rarity's pointing at Spike's little hat and trench coat, saying, "You look very noir-esque." And now it's a little continuity nod to Rarity Investigates. And then later on, Smolder is making mention of tatzelworms and hydras. So just little hints of nods to episodes like Three's a Crowd and way back in Season 1, Feeling Pinky Keen. I mean, this might be the most continuity-centric episode in the entire series when you get right down to it. I don't know if there's ever been any other entry in MLP that has made this many little nods in the dialogue, which anyone who's just watching the episode casually maybe not even pick up on. But I am glad that they're there because, hey, it's fun, at least for me. But getting back to the story, you may not understand what is going to happen to Spike right off the bat. I mean, when you first see what's happening to him, you might think that, well, this is a sort of disease that Spike is picking up? Is this some kind of dragon pox? After a little while, it turns out, no, this is a puberty thing. This is more Spike is growing up. When Smolder starts explaining a few things about what's happening and how that comes about in dragon culture, they get kicked out of the cave just because they smell bad, and as a consequence, that same smell tends to attract giant predators? That's pretty harsh, don't you think? Oh my goodness. I mean, I knew dragons were a little hardcore, but the more you think about that, parents kicking out their kids when they're Spike's age and letting them just fend for themselves against something as giant as a rock, you have to wonder exactly how many of them actually live to be adulthood. It's a little dark when you think about it. Ugh. I did appreciate a little bit of the setup in that apparently exposure to phoenix feathers can cause a pony to lose their hearing.
I'm talking even louder than I thought, aren't I? I don't know! Hey! Is this the shouting closet?
It's a little out of nowhere, but it does have a reason for being in the plot later on. Because when Rarity shows up, and the rock is already flying around with Zecora, you start to understand, oh yes, there is a whole point to all this. That's actually clever writing. That's a good setup. Yes, you put Rarity in danger, and Spike feels all the more motivated to go and save them. And it doesn't feel so convoluted. But then it's kind of followed up by Twilight showing up just a minute later, and you kind of wonder why she had no idea that there was this giant rock flying around making all this noise when she didn't have any issues with her hearing. So it was a good setup for one character, but it's kind of ruined by the appearance of a second character. It's a bit of an issue. It's both a good and a bad thing. I did appreciate the fact that you didn't know exactly where all of this molting was going until Spike started glowing and ponies were in danger. And you start to think, oh, wait a second. Are they actually going to do this? Are they actually going to make Spike like other dragons finally? And then he gets covered in that stone shape, and he gets to have his grand entrance, and yeah, it's fun to see. It is definitely fun to see. I am glad that they gave him a couple of segments, a couple of short segments where he's trying to figure out how to fly, but it doesn't last very long because it takes all of 30 seconds before he's flying upside down and going around in circles around this giant rock. And yeah, it's necessary to save his precious Rarity, but it's a little convoluted way of getting the conflict resolved. But yeah, you do feel good for Spike, for finally getting some good karma going on his part, for finally growing up, for finally changing after all these seasons. And yeah, much like with when the CMC were making their huge transition a long time ago, you feel like the characters are progressing. I don't know how much of a real change is going to be for him in the series beyond this point, other than the fact that, hey, he's got a new design, and hey, he's going to be floating around, because as the episode comes to an end, yeah, the more things change, the more they really stay the same. Spike is really going to be treated very much just the same way he's been treated since all the way back in season 1. This is just the way things are. And in a way, that is a little disappointing, but in another way, it's still nice to see that they do share a bond that way. It goes back and forth. I did wonder that after all of this time, why is it that, way back in season 2, when Twilight was really taken aback that ponies knew next to nothing about dragons, and that really was affecting Spike in a bad way? Since they did meet with Ember, and they do have regular correspondence with her, why didn't they actually seek to learn everything they could at that point? I mean, in the seasons since then, the more you think about it, this really shouldn't have been as much of a surprise as it was. I mean, even more so that Smolder is there in the episode trying to explain to Spike that, hey, these things are happening, but P.S., it's likely that you're about to get your wings. I mean, that would have been a little bit helpful, but at the same time, maybe that's kind of an aspect of Smolder's character where she's just kind of not that nice a dragon. Or maybe that's just for most dragons, especially considering that they kick their kids out when they start smelling bad and may even get eaten by predators because of it. Still a little dark. But this was fun to see. This was a momentous occasion for a major character in the show. But does that mean it's actually going to change who he is, other than a new design? Other than the fact that he can just float around a little bit from here on out? It's fun, but is there anything else beyond that? We have yet to see. In the meantime, though, I would like to hear your thoughts on Meltdown and whether any of you saw this coming. Because, yeah, this is a pretty big deal that we've been really wanting to see for quite a while with Spike. At least for me. Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and as per usual, I am Dr. Wolf, and I look forward to hearing from you.